Uh, a meeting of the Planning and Economic Development Committee is being held Tuesday, May 4th at 7:01 via teleconference. As chairman of the Planning and Economic Development Committee, I find that due to the state of the emergency declared by the governor as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, in accordance with the governor's emergency order number 12 pursuant to executive order 2020-04, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. Please note that there's no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to this meeting, as was authorized pursuant to the governor's emergency order. However, in accordance with the emergency order, I'm confirming that we are providing public access to the meeting by telephone, with additional access possibilities by video or other electronic means. To access Zoom, please refer to the agenda or the city's website for the meeting link. To join by phone, please dial 1-929-205-6099, meeting ID 844-7285-6913, passcode 9999999. We previously gave notice to the public of the necessary information for accessing the meeting through public postings. Instructions have also been provided on the City of Nashua's website, www.nashua.nh.gov, and publicly noticed at City Hall and the Nashua Public Library. If anyone has problem accessing this meeting via phone or channel 16, please call 603-821-2049 and they will help you connect. In the event that the public is unable to access the meeting via the methods mentioned above, the meeting will be adjourned and rescheduled. Please note that all votes that are taken during this meeting shall be done by roll call vote. We'll start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance. When each member states their presence, please state whether there's anyone else in the room with you during this meeting, which is required under the right to know law. Alderman Laws will not be able to join us tonight, so I will take the roll. Please state why you cannot attend and confirm that you can hear the proceedings and state who is present with you in the room. Alderman at Large, David Tenza, I am here. I can hear everyone and no one's in the room with me. Alderman Jan Schmidt.
I am present, alone in the room, and I can hear everyone.
Alderman Tom Lopez. I don't see Alderman Lopez present. Alderman Ben at Large, Ben Clemens.
I am here. I can hear everyone by myself.
Thank you. And as I mentioned, Alderman at Large, Brandon Laws is not able to join us this evening. Also in attendance is Alderman Patricia Klee, Deb Chisholm, the Waterways Manager, and Director Sarah Marchant. We'll start the meeting by holding a public hearing on 021-058, amending the floodplain management land use ordinances. Rather than taking testimony, I don't see anyone here. I'm going to start the public hearing by allowing Ms. Chisholm to speak. I will also note that Alderman Lopez has joined us at 7:04. Ms. Chisholm, if you'd like to address 021-058, and I'm not sure if it'll be Ms. Chisholm or Director Marchant, but either, please feel free to let us know what this ordinance is about and why it's important that we adopt it.
Sure. Thank you, Alderman Tenza. I appreciate that. If you want, I have a couple of slides that I can share if I'm allowed to share my screen. If I can find where I put them on my screen. Here we go.
You're all set.
Let's see. So the reason that I'm here this evening, I'm the Waterways Manager for the City of Nashua. And a few years ago, my predecessor was successful in getting us a position in the community rating system, which is a voluntary program that is run essentially by FEMA. So as part of that program, what we've been required to do this year is a 5-year review on all of our floodplain management. And one of the things that's required this year for us is to make some modifications to our floodplain management ordinance, which is the one that is before you this evening. This floodplain ordinance applies to land that is in the special flood hazard area. The special flood hazard area is actually land that is in the floodplain within the city that is subject to a 1% or greater possibility of flooding in any given year. So the 100-year flood event. And I have a couple of examples here to sort of give you some understanding of what that special flood hazard area is. On the left, you can see there's just a screenshot here of Salmon Brook and Fields Grove.
We can't see your screen. Sorry to interrupt. It's not.
Well then, let's see. Here. How about that?
There it is.
There we go. Perfect.
Okay. All right. So back to where we were. Here we go. Oh, next slide. That was the boring one. Okay. So what I'm showing you here is sort of a couple of examples that explain really what the special flood hazard area is. And in Nashua, you can see this is a screenshot here. If you can see some of the names of the street, but what we're looking at here, the majority of this is Salmon Brook, and this is the part that is just a little bit north of Bishop Girton High School. This area right here off of Field Street is Fields Grove Park. So this pink area is the special flood hazard area. And here on the right, what I've got is sort of a cross section that explains what the floodplain and what the special flood hazard area are. So you can see, if you're picturing this as Salmon Brook, the stream channel, you can see that there's a stream channel, there's a floodway, there's a flood fringe, and that entirety is the 100-year floodplain. So these folks that live over here near Salmon Brook on some of these side streets may, in effect, during one of those types of floods, may see some water backing up in their backyards. Fortunately, most of these buildings aren't actually located in the special flood hazard area. But for this evening, what we're talking about for changes to this floodplain management ordinance are to really keep us in line in the community rating system. As you can see in the memo that I had provided in the packet, that we're currently at a classification on a scale of 1 to 10, we're currently an 8, with 1 being the best. And I'm not sure there are actually many properties in the entire country that are classified as a 1. But we are currently classified as an 8. And in order for us to maintain that classification, we do have to make some slight changes to our floodplain ordinance. And the reason that this grading system, if you will, is important is because ultimately what it does is, number one, it gives people who are required to have flood insurance, those folks who have a mortgage on their home that is federally backed, they are required to have flood insurance over and above what they pay for their standard homeowners insurance. So our rating of an 8 out of 10 essentially gives these folks somewhere around a 10% discount on their flood insurance. Really, the other thing that this does, I mean, I'm happy to be able to say that the city provides this service to give folks a discount, because that's always a nice thing. But the real goals of the program, as you can see here, are to reduce and avoid flood damage to insurable properties, to strengthen and support the insurance aspects of the National Flood Insurance Program, and to foster comprehensive floodplain management. And really all this comes down to is, from our standpoint, is municipal resilience. And I know you've all heard Justin Cates talk about resiliency for the city. And this is one of those things that really, flooding is one of the most frequent natural disaster type things that happens in the city. And to have flood insurance on your home, have that be a requirement, can be quite costly, which I have never had to have it on my property, but have found since being in this position that in some circumstances it can be quite expensive. So to be able to give these folks a little bit of a break is a good thing as far as I can tell. What are the changes that are needed? I think that in your packet you should have received are the red. Well, I'm not sure you see the actual red of the red line strikeout, but there are some changes that are made, strikeouts and underlines and additions that are made to the floodplain ordinance. And essentially what it comes down to is that for residential properties, primarily the lowest floor of any residential property that in the special flood hazard area must be at least 1 foot above that 100-year flood elevation. So the overall concept is building higher is better. And you see it a lot at the coast. You see properties all along the eastern seaboard that are close to the coast that are higher than you would normally expect. Some buildings down, some residential buildings down in the Carolina area, those buildings are high on stilts, and there's a reason for that. We don't see that obviously here in Nashua, but we do have base flood elevations, 100-year flood elevations for the Nashua River, for the Merrimack River, for Salmon Brook, and some of the other smaller streams that can adversely impact homes. So the concept of making sure that new homes or homes that are being substantially modified are actually being built 1 foot higher than that 100-year flood elevation. Currently, the way that ordinance is written is it is written such that the building can be at the base flood elevation. So adding an extra foot, what's considered to be freeboard, if you will, is what the focus of this ordinance modification is. So making sure that folks that are going to be either building within that special flood hazard area or making major modifications to their properties will be making those modifications 1 foot above that 100-year flood elevation. Any electrical, plumbing, HVAC equipment must also be at least 1 foot above the 100-year flood elevation. And that, the way that we've got the modifications here, that would also modify the utility placement for non-residential properties as well. So this right here sort of gives you a little bit of an example of what a home that is located within the floodplain, what it looks like relative to what the normal channel looks like. So picture this, if you will, to be Salmon Brook. The base flood elevation, which is considerably higher than the normal channel, and then the home over here, and making sure that the lowest floor of that building is at least 1 foot above that base flood elevation. That way, when that flood comes through, those folks won't have any damage to their home. So that is sort of the modifications to the floodplain in a bit of a nutshell. I don't think I need to share my screen anymore. I don't know how to get out of here. Hold on. All right, well, I guess I'm going to keep sharing my screen for a little bit until I can figure out how to not share my screen. Oh, the button that says stop share. There we go. Okay, sorry about that. So that's all I got for you tonight. Those minor changes will allow us to stay within the community rating system program, as I said, that provides that additional discount for folks that need to have flood insurance, and also provides us as a municipality with some more resilience when it comes to flooding scenarios.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from committee members or anyone's here? Alderman Clemens?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I actually have a few questions. Hopefully won't take too long, but Ms. Chisholm, do you know how many houses or buildings in Nashua that this would affect approximately?
Well, the key here is that just because your home may be in the special flood hazard area, doesn't mean you need to make any changes to it. If new homes are being built in the special flood hazard area or substantial modifications are being made to that home, then this would go into effect. So currently I think there are about 340 residential buildings in the special flood hazard area currently throughout the city.
Mhm.
But
guess
like I said,
the-
no, go ahead.
Well, the reason I ask this is because what I'm thinking is, right, if you've got a house that's been there for however many years and there is a flood, a major flood, and it comes and it wrecks a substantial portion of these homes. In the past, we may be able to save the structure in the sense that you'd be able to rebuild it because really you're mitigating mold and things like that. If we go ahead with this ordinance, isn't it possible that that house would have to be completely torn down and rebuilt?
Yes, well, I'm going to give you the easy answer, which is we would have to deal with that on a case by case basis. I guess I'm not sure about that. I don't know. I don't think that we would have to tear the whole thing down and rebuild it. I think that you could make the modifications, and it certainly is. It is up to the municipality to make the decisions on what substantial modifications would need to be made in order to get that home back. And presumably, although not a requirement, if you don't have a federally backed mortgage and you don't have flood insurance as a requirement, you may or may not have flood insurance that would help cover the costs of the damage to your home.
Right.
I'm always trying to put in a commercial that says, just because it's not required doesn't mean you shouldn't have it.
Right.
But that's how insurance works. At any rate, yeah, that's a really good question. And I don't know if Director Marchand has anything else to add as far as what we would do in that situation, especially in the building department specifically.
It is a great question. I think it depends, as exactly as you said, on the circumstance. I think that there's a lot of tools in our toolbox to be able to help somebody find a solution to that. And if it was a really extreme situation, this is an applicant could go to the zoning board if they had some special hardship or special circumstances that would justify it, so that they could rebuild if there was something special there. But there's a lot of modifications in our toolbox that would allow us to be able to get that finished floor grade of the basement up. And that's something that I think could probably be worked through. It would be 1 foot higher than it is now, but that doesn't mean it would have to be completely rebuilt now.
Well, yeah, because I'm wondering, I mean, I don't know how many, obviously there's approximately 340 residential, maybe there's more actual properties, commercial as well in a flood zone. And I guess what I wonder about is if there's been other communities or you've looked at that where they've adopted something similar to this, because what I'm thinking is that, right, they're all at different levels. So it depends on if there was a house that was built right next to the river, for example, you're going to have, it could be that the first and second floor are, before you get to that 1 foot above, right? That the 1 foot above could be technically a story or two up, right? I guess that's what I'm asking hypothetically. Is that possible by when you look at the definition of this ordinance, that is what it's basically saying, is that anything that's built would have to be above that threshold. Am I getting the wording correct, or am I?
So it doesn't mean you can't rebuild, sorry. It means that major equipment has to be 1 foot above base flood elevation. So I don't think it means you can't rebuild. It means the goal here is that we're not building new in the floodplain, in the floodway, right? That we're discouraging
Mhm.
building brand new. The rebuilding has a
Right.
lot of different options associated with it. And as I said, there's a lot of tools in the toolbox there to work with people who are who are making a substantial, say an addition on an existing structure, right? So maybe the addition has to comply. And so any new mechanicals, new major plumbing in the addition would have to comply, but it isn't necessarily that the whole structure has to be rebuilt or demolished to be able to be
You can't
modified.
Okay.
just have a
I-
bunk bed, you
I
have to
guess
put it in a
that-
loft.
That would be my concern on this, is that, again, I don't care about new property. As far as I'm concerned, they should be building up to code and things like that. But I guess where my concern comes in is if you have a minor flood that doesn't damage the structure, but you have to go on the inside and do all sorts of what would be considered by the city substantial rework of a house, the whole first floor, the whole basement, everything, right? That's where my concern is, because in a case like that, it's going to make it that much more expensive for the homeowner to rebuild, as opposed to being able to salvage that structure and kind of rebuild from that same frame.
I would
So
guess,
that's my concern.
I
You're
would guess
muted.
that ultimately it would end up being less expensive. And I say this from a standpoint of the amount of flood insurance that people would be required to purchase. Again, if they already purchase flood insurance, their costs, and again, I don't want to, I'm certainly not an insurance agent. I don't know what the details are on how much of their cost recovery there is. But if they're already insured, then I would think that the money would be there in order to help make those changes that need to be made so that they are in compliance with these regulations. I have actually had people call me asking me, because they currently are in a floodplain, they would be willing to spend, say, $20,000 to have their house lifted up so that it was no longer in the flood zone, and therefore their return on investment is maybe 5 years, based on what their savings would be and
Right.
not having to pay flood insurance.
Yeah.
Further questions, Alderman Clements?
Yeah, I got as much as I could get out of it. So thank you. And I appreciate the responses. Thank you.
Alderman Lopez.
So I think Director Marchant might specifically know, but does this affect any, specifically the riverfront landing project where we have potentially contaminated soil under what may be a parking lot, I guess, or the Mohawk Tannery site?
So those are great
think you're
questions.
muted.
It does not affect riverfront landing because they're outside of the flood zone, and we don't know what the proposed development is for the Mohawk Tannery. However, you wouldn't be allowed, even under today's ordinance, to build new structures within the flood zone, floodway. And so I think in the details we've seen for some Mohawk development of some of the different concepts, all of those new structures have been outside of that floodplain area because the cost of flood insurance again would be prohibitive, and they need mortgages on all of that. They would need to be able to finance that. And so none of the new development there that I've seen concepts for has been proposed within the floodplain.
Well, I mean, I'd be concerned about the housing, but mostly concerned about the contaminant. And if we do a structure to contain junk from the ponds and then maybe asbestos, is this going to impact that? Would it be moved to outside of the zone?
I
My
believe.
brief understanding, Alderman Lopez, of the area that would be remediated, that capped area that has been discussed, is actually right now is outside of the floodplain. So from that standpoint, it wouldn't be an issue, but I think it's an issue that we would probably need to talk about outside of this specific floodplain conversation about it being where it is near the river. And I think there are other issues regarding building within a wetland buffer would also be an issue. But from the standpoint of the modifications to this floodplain ordinance, neither of those projects I think would be impacted at this point.
Okay, good to know. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Further questions? So if I could just ask a question, because you talked about the utilities being 1 foot above the floodplain, and even in the graphic that you put up on your last slide, most of us have our utilities in our basements. So does that mean new construction and substantial modifications would have to place the utilities, your water heater and boiler, whatever you're using to heat the house, outside of the basement, if it's within that, if it's not outside of the 1 foot of the floodplain?
I think that the modifications you could make would be to have them be elevated, as long as they're a foot above the base flood elevation. That would be correct. There are requirements, changes to the floodplain ordinance relative to non-residential as well, where we're asking non-residential development to make sure that their equipment is also elevated, and if not, that it is completely flood-proofed. So that's a series of certifications that need to happen in order for the building safety department to know that that all of that equipment is flood-proofed, which prevents water from getting in and staying in that equipment, and thereby causing more damage that way. Did that answer your question, Alderman Tenza?
It did. I'm just trying to imagine if the entirety of the basement is within the floodplain, but the first floor is a foot above it or at the floodplain level, how that would work. But I suppose that's for a developer to figure out if they want to rehab or build on within the floodplain. So, Director Marchant.
I would say that constructing within the floodplain is going to be heavily discouraged in the first place.
Okay.
We do build on slab. We don't do it a ton in the New England, but there certainly are buildings on slab where mechanicals and such are, at grade level as well. And there are absolutely ways we can accommodate that. But it would be very unusual for new development to be built within the floodplain because of the costs of getting financing and the flood insurance. It would not most likely be cost effective to do so.
Thank you. Alderman Schmidt.
Thank you. I brought up GIS to take a look at the location we're talking about, and put in the layer to show me the prime wetland and floods area, all of that information. I have never realized we had so much within the city. Prime wetland in the center of Nashua, that's pretty cool. But a lot of the new building that's going on is well above that. And obviously that's the best idea. Do we have any land that is open for building anywhere near a current floodplain?
I think that, Alderwoman Schmidt, I think that my opinion of that is that there's not a lot of leftover space for building. We're really looking at redevelopment at this point. If you've looked along the Nashua River, there's not a lot of open lots that are left. at this point.
Oh, so we'd really be talking about redevelopment at this point. If a neighborhood needed to be replaced for some reason, the houses were no longer viable, damaged, whatever, a new construction going in, this would be valuable information for us to have on the books, what we allow within the floodplain. And when you're looking at like New Orleans or New Jersey that suffered floods, the houses that were that did stay, that were damaged, a lot of them were lifted, raised up an entire floor's worth and put on the stilts, which seems like a really great idea if you're in any danger there anyway. So at this point, we just need to know that this is on the books and that we're ready in case there's going to be redevelopment, right?
Correct.
Thank you. That's all I had.
Thank you. Alderman Clements.
Yeah, just as a follow through for what Alderman Schmidt was saying, do our current ordinances, I imagine they allow designs such as like first floor garages and things like that, where you could technically have a house where your first floor was mostly a garage and then you build above that. Our ordinances allow that type of structure, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
Further questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll move into the public hearing of 021-058, amending the floodplain management land use ordinances. I'll start by taking testimony in favor. All right, seeing none, I'll take testimony in opposition. Seeing none, I'll open it back up to testimony in favor. And again, seeing none, I'll open it up to testimony in opposition. Seeing and hearing none, I will close the public hearing on ordinance 021-058 at 7:33 p.m. And we will move into our regular meeting of the Planning and Economic Development Committee. First item on the agenda is public comment. Seeing none, discussion by the alderman. Is there anything that you folks would like to discuss? Okay, seeing none. We did get a communication from Deb Chisholm, the Waterways Manager, regarding the proposed modification to the Land Use Code 190, Article 7, Floodplain Management. I would also received a communication from Matt Sullivan, Planning Department Manager, referral regarding the referral from the Board of Aldermen on 021-058, amending the Floodplain Management Land Use Ordinance. There being no objection, I'll accept the communication and place them on file. There's no unfinished business, no new business resolutions. New business ordinances 021-58, amending the floodplain management land use ordinances. Alderman Schmidt, do you have a motion? Sorry, Alderman Schmidt, you're muted still.
And it sounded so nice in my ears. I would recommend final passage by roll call of ordinance 21-058.
Okay, the motion is for final passage of 021-58. Is there any discussion on this ordinance? Okay, seeing none, I will call the roll. Alderman Schmidt,
Yes.
Alderman Lopez,
Yes.
Alderman Clemens,
Yes.
and Alderman Tenza votes yes. That is 4 yeas and 0 nays. In that motion for final passage passes, carries. Nothing tabled in committee. Anything for public comment? General discussion by members of the committee. Alderman Lopez.
I had a conversation with Director Cummings about, I've had a number of constituent, not complaints exactly, but there's been a lot of confusion about different development opportunities and things that were being done downtown where there hasn't been a lot of like explicit, straightforward communication from various city departments and participating private partners. But I think a lot of it has been both parties trying to navigate incentives and developmental language for programs that provide things like tax incentives, tax breaks, and that kind of stuff. And I know that economic development is working to try to encourage business owners downtown to do things like adding on additional housing units, expanding and developing their property to improve its utility. And to that end, I had asked Director Cummings if it would be possible to put together like a general list of things to look for or ways to use incentives or programs that businesses and individuals owning property downtown could use to kind of conceptualize what their planning process is going to be. Like, how tall do you want to build something? What kind of amenities have advantages over others? An example would be increasing square footage can increase the size of your development, which increases your tax bonus, but at the same time, it may create expansions to your taxable square footage as well. So a recommendation Director Cummings gave in one place was build an elevator shaft that makes a handicap accessible. It adds space, but at the same time, it doesn't necessarily raise your tax burden. Now, that was a very specific example for a specific type of business, but in having him present some of the projects that are going on and some of the tools that he's using to encourage these landlords, it may help create a better understanding for everybody as to how to develop a project downtown that has benefit to the city, has benefit to the landowner, and balances the increase in revenue and value that they add against the cost of developing and the taxes included.
Thank you. We can follow up with Director Cummings too. That sounds like it may be a good topic for a future meeting as kind of a public way to promote what he's able to put together.
I think it'll also help in preventing any misunderstandings. I know in at least one situation, the person involved was asking when we would be able to pass legislation for a TIF on the second story of his building. And I was like, I don't think that's what it's for. There are project-based ones, but it's not that straightforward. So if the public sees us doing one thing in one place and kind of thinks, oh, I can do that in mine, then having a discussion and an example of different types of projects might be helpful in making sure that they understand where they can't do things that they see happening other places.
Sure. Well, thank you for that, and we'll follow up with Director Cummings on that. Any other items of discussion? Seeing none, remarks by the alderman? Any remarks? No. Okay, there's no need for possible non-public session. Alderman Clemmons, would you mind giving us a motion to adjourn?
I would move to adjourn.
The motion
By
is
roll call.
motion is to adjourn by roll call. Alderman Schmidt,
Yes.
Alderman Lopez,
Yes.
Alderman Clemmons,
Yes.
and Alderman Tenza votes yes. That's 4 yeas, 0 nays. The motion carries. The meeting is declared closed at 7:40 p.m. Thanks, everyone.
Director Marcia, you sound as allergic as
Thank
I
you,
am. I hope
everyone.
you feel better.
Yes, Director Martian's got